I am old enough to remember when Iraq was a national security threat, and young enough to admit that many people I admired, like Christopher Hitchens and Michael Crichton, got it wrong. Iraq wasn't a national security threat, which is why I want to talk about Andrew Schulz's monologue and break it down, because his thesis in this one, that TikTok ban is appropriate, missed the mark. The underpinnings behind the thesis that the TikTok ban is a national security threat is lugubrious. But I also use Andrew Schulz's video because it's still funny. It still functions as an entertaining piece of content. And that it's its primary objective, which is to be funny, to be comedic, to be entertaining. I would put forth to you this is not really an attack on Andrew Schulz, but an unpacking of a more complex discussion that's taken place at all levels of our society right now. Let's get into the video and see where Andrew Schulz maybe gets it wrong this week.
TikTok, you commie. This week we found out that America's favorite dancing sensation was a front for an evil, corrupt...
I'm gonna fast forward a tad because I don't want to just freeboot his entire video.
It's not like other countries. When they say they're going to build a wall, they do it. And in 2017, China passed a law requiring corporations to hand over data at the Communist Party's request.
This is the first assertion that needs a little shading in. The law Andrew is referring to, where corporations have to hand over data to the CCP upon request, applies to all businesses doing transactions in China, so Amazon or IBM as well.
Basically, in Beijing, industry and government are bound together like a Chinese woman's feet. TikTok claims they don't send that info to the Chinese government, and they even bought an American CEO who looks like meathead Lance Armstrong.
Okay, forget the denial, let's just assume they're lying. The amount of data TikTok is collecting is heavily debated. Privacy experts admit TikTok does not appear to be collecting any more or unusual data than its competitors like Facebook or Instagram.
TikTok claims they don't send that info to the Chinese government, and they even bought an American CEO who looks like meathead Lance Armstrong. Honestly, he looks like John Cena bent Lance over his bike. I said bike. But because they're a Chinese company, they gotta listen to the communist government.
Of course, due to Chinese law, could the CCP request access to TikTok's data even if it's on servers in the United States? Yes, but it's not some magical keystone pipeline dumping TikTok videos onto monitors in a Beijing warehouse for nerds to look at. In fact, I would submit to you, congruent to China, the United States government has a similar relationship with all US-based social media corporations. The NSA, the FBI, the CIA, the Southern District of New York all have relationships and laws requiring US social media companies to turn over their data to the feds. And they do it in a very similar manner to the way China does. The NSA gets a FISA court warrant, which is a court behind closed doors, made by judges that we did not elect, and then boom, like an illegal Chinese firework, they can see whatever they like. Reports from ProPublica routinely show the US government looking at private citizens' data, not just in the US, but in Europe when they shouldn't. In fact, Obama had to apologize to Angela Merkel for the spying. The exact same crime we're told by the government to worry about China committing, the US government commits on a routine basis. And it's not a security threat. Even Europe, which knows that the United States government can and does spy on its citizens through social media, chose not to ban Facebook or Google, but instead more tightly regulate the kind of data it can collect.
TikTok has been in more teen phones than James Franco. Last year, they paid $5 million to the US government for illegally collecting so many phone numbers of underage girls that Ghislaine Maxwell got jealous. China's been
Okay, stop. Again, I propose these incidents don't occur in a vacuum. The anecdote sounds bad, but again, we need context. The same year TikTok was fined $5 million, YouTube was fined $137 by the FTC for violating child online privacy acts, and then had to pay New York State another $40 million on top of it. To be clear, I'm not saying TikTok is a good corporation. It's not. Instead, whether there's sufficient unique evidence that makes TikTok a national security threat, the $5 million sounds scary until we remember other social media companies are fined for the exact same thing.
China's been peeking at America for decades. A few years back, this boy band of Chinese army hackers got arrested for stealing the data of 22 million federal employees. Probably how they know the American identity so well. Military, sugar, fried food. How else do you think they came up with General Tso's chicken? You're probably thinking, well, the American government is using our social media to spy on China, right? Wrong. We use planes for that, but that's not the point. Our government can't just flip a switch and make tech companies do whatever they want. Our government doesn't censor social media. Social media censors our government. Remember when the FBI wanted inside that terrorist iPhone? Apple told them to kick rocks. We have a separation between government and corporations.
Right, so I proposed to you this idea we have in the US where there is a separation between private corporations and government has been proven by reporters and leaks and whistleblowers like Snowden to be an illusion. With the extension of the Patriot Act and FISA courts, the federal government can basically just flip a switch and get social media companies to do what they want. In fact, ironically, the reason the CCP gives to its Chinese citizens to ban American social media is that Facebook, and Gmail, and YouTube are a national security threat to China. Also, the iPhone example Andrew uses here sounds good, but upon closer inspection, I'm not sure is an appropriate analogy.
Apple told them to kick rocks.
Apple controls their product from end to end, and it gave them really unique leverage in that case against the federal government. To add a second level of irony, the FBI argued in court that it was a national security threat to not give them access to the phone. But does the fact the US government can tap the Facebook account of a Wuhan virologist make it worth banning in China? Most people in the West tend to think it's dumb that China bans social media, that the CCP is lying to its people, and there exists no real existential threat to allowing YouTube or Twitter in its country. And they would be correct. So with that logic, why are we then turning around and doing the same thing as China?
But yet somehow America's Little Red Riding Hoods are suggesting that Trump is banning TikTok due to xenophobia. What?
Okay, one, that's a picture of Taylor Lorenz, and I find her ideas to be chronically idiotic. So Andrew and I agree she is the queen of bad takes, and banning TikTok is not racist.
TikTok due to xenophobia. What? Then why isn't he banning Alibaba, Samsung, Sony, Honda, Toyota, Kia?
Andrew raises a good point. Why does Trump seem so particularly focused on banning TikTok and WeChat and not things like Alibaba and Wish if it wasn't over data privacy concerns?
Tell you why. Because they're not stealing our data. Most of our shit is manufactured in Asia. Your beloved iPhone was made by Taiwanese company Pegatron, which sounds like a Christmas gift from Porsche de Rossi. We don't care that Nikes are made in China.
He gives an answer, but I would submit this is actually speculation. Andrew doesn't know why Trump or the government is focused on TikTok, and neither do I. But a particular counter-narrative is that media companies like the New York Times and big tech see a competitor. A big competitor that is drawing away precious eyeballs, attention, and advertising dollars. And if they can convince the government to ban it insincerely by labeling it some sort of national security threat, they'll do it. They've eliminated a competitor. They win. And they don't really care whether that whole thesis about national security was true or not. All they know is there's one less digital media company competing for eyeballs in the United States.
If they're censoring and controlling the content of their own apps in China, what do you think they'll do over here? I'll tell you, the same shit, and it's already happening. After Reddit took $150 million from China, posts about Hong Kong just started disappearing like Uyghurs walking to work. I mean, even LeBron James can't talk about China because they'll hit him where it hurts. So, if they're already censoring us, how bad could it get?
So I propose we widen the conversation while acknowledging China's willingness to invest and lend money to gain leverage over countries from Africa to companies like the NBA is scary and a threat that the government has continued to ignore. TikTok isn't really part of that agenda. And saying it is sounds more like fear-mongering than thinking complexly. Instead, I'd like to put forth we have a variety of media distributions, a marketplace, if you will, of apps.
You think Russia impacted our election with a few Facebook ads? Imagine if Russia owned Facebook. Yeah, with the rise of TikTok, China could easily spread their ideologies and customs like communism or squatting to smoke a cigarette.
If TikTok was the only app people in the USA had access to for information, then the CCP pumping it full of Chinese propaganda to change public perception or sway elections would definitely be a problem. But thankfully, we don't live in that world. By keeping our access to as many apps as possible, it keeps our ability to hear from as many different viewpoints as possible. And that's a good thing, even if some of those viewpoints aren't correct. After all, if the US government didn't label Facebook, which has 1 billion more users than TikTok, a national security threat after the 2016 election, as Andrew points out, then why would TikTok be more influential than Facebook? The people on TikTok can't even vote.
Mention, China has every DM and stupid video that these 18-year-olds are posting, which they could use as blackmail to force future politicians, judges, and businessmen to do their bidding. You know damn well our first female president is probably pussy popping a pop.
I submit to you this is an unavoidable risk. There will always be governments or agencies looking to compromise individuals. Banning TikTok won't solve the problem of future countries getting compromising information on people. It's just an inevitable fact of life that has occurred for thousands of years. Blackmail.
Pop Smoke right now. And look, maybe I'm being an alarmist, but I know how good they are with Dance Dance Revolution. So what do? If we just ban TikTok, another foreign app is going to pop up next year. So maybe the best long-term solution to protect American people is to come up with some sort of regulation on data collection for all companies in and outside the US, especially those controlled by a communist regime. American companies also have to quit being so fucking greedy. They're on their knees salivating at the opportunity of Chinese investment.
I agree with everything Andrew is saying here. The hypocrisy for money is a huge problem.
We're the fucking danger. We're the one who knocks. And the way you maintain that position is by being cautious. And if that means swapping TikTok for Reels, then I'm all about it. I love that Zuckerberg made an American knockoff of TikTok.
I guess I view that as quintessentially un-American. What I like about the US is we respect intellectual property. We reward people for doing cool things, and we trust our citizens to live their lives how they want. You ban a product claiming it's not safe for us without concrete evidence, and then give that intellectual property to an American company to profit from, isn't American, it's Chinese. And two wrongs don't make a right. Anyway, that is all. Hopefully I gave you some questions to wrangle over. I submit to you, TikTok is not a good company, and likely never will be. But TikTok also does not meet any honest standard definition of national security threat to our lives. Instead, the phrase national security threat has historically been a vague and useful term for the government to throw out when it wants to convince the public to support its agenda. Agendas, the past revealed, that are more often invested in corporate interests and the desires of a few rather than the well-being of masses. Anyway, if you like this video, please subscribe.